Welcome to the Deep Dive. The news coming out of Palestine has been just relentless lately, hasn't it? It's overwhelming.
It really has.
So today, we wanted to take a slightly different angle. Still somber, absolutely, but a crucial one, we think, to help you understand some of the deeper forces at work.
Right.
We're going to deep dive into the work of Francesca Albanese. She's the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967.
A really significant voice on this.
Definitely. And her reports, her speeches, they uncover what she actually calls a darker truth, the economic engines behind a lot of this.
That's exactly right. So our mission today for you, our listener, is to go beyond, the daily political back and forth.
Yeah.
We want to reveal how, according to Albanese, this long-standing settler-colonial project hasn't just happened on its own. It's been, in her words, driven and enabled by the corporate sector.
Driven and enabled.
And she argues it's actually evolved from what she first termed an economy of occupation. It's now become, an economy of genocide. That's her framing.
Wow. Okay. An economy of genocide. That's a heavy term. Let's try and unpack that.
It is.
We're basically diving into this whole network of companies, right? Corporate actors who are deeply, deeply tangled up in this system.
Yeah, tangled is a good word.
We need to look at how they profit, what kinds of tools they're supplying, and why Albanese is stressing that accountability here is just so incredibly urgent.
Exactly. Where does the money flow? What does it enable?
Okay, so where does Albanese start? How does she set the scene in her report?
Well, she opens her remarks with this sense of foreboding that words can hardly capture. She paints a picture of Gaza that is just apocalyptic. People enduring suffering, as she puts it, beyond imagination. The official figures, over 200,000 killed or injured. But she points out that health experts, they think the real number is far, far higher.
Unbelievable.
And she highlights how Israel has dismantled the last UN functions for humanitarian aid there. She calls Israel's own Gaza Humanitarian Foundation a, quote, death trap engineered to kill or force the flight of a starved, bombarded, emaciated population marked for elimination.
A death trap, just devastating language. And what about the West Bank?
Yeah.
Because that often gets less coverage, maybe.
It does, but the situation there is also dire. She details the largest wave of forced displacement since 1967. Nearly 1,000 killed, 10,000 injured, another 10,000 detained, many subjected to torture, according to our findings.
1,000 detained.
Yeah. And then you have armed settlers rampaging, plus around 900 checkpoints and other obstacles just choking daily life. Palestinians there, she says, are basically abandoned to their fate.
So against that backdrop, you introduce this core concept. She uses the economy of occupation, transforming into an economy of genocide. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So this economy of occupation, she explains, isn't new. It's a mode of domination, sometimes called colonial racial capitalism. It's been there a long time. But the transformation she's pointing to now is that it's become, in her view, an economy of genocide. She stresses, look, this isn't about a few bad apples or isolated incidents.
Right, not just rogue companies.
No, it's systemic. It's where corporate entities are directly profiting from, and her words again, the obliteration of innocent people's lives.
And you mentioned a statistic earlier, something about the stock market. That seemed almost counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's pretty staggering. Get this. Since October 2023, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange has apparently soared by 213% in U.S. dollars.
213%.
That's what the report states, amassing something like $225.7 billion in market gains.
So what on earth does that mean? How can that happen alongside such devastation?
Well, that's the paradox Albanese highlights. She puts it very starkly. One people enriched, one people erased.
Wow.
It forces you to confront this really shocking reality, right? Where immense suffering seems directly correlated with maybe even fueling huge economic gains elsewhere.
So how does this link back to the idea of the occupation being a testing ground?
Well, the argument is that this decades-long occupation, this forever occupation, has created, the perfect laboratory, an optimal testing ground for arms makers and big tech companies.
Because there's no oversight.
Very little oversight, almost zero accountability, according to the report. So Israel tests new weapons, new surveillance tech, lethal drones, unmanned systems.
And then they sell them.
Exactly. They market them globally as battle-proven, tested in the field.
Okay, so let's break down the sectors involved, starting with the military sector itself. Albanese calls militarized violence the engine of this project.
Yeah, the engine of Israel's settler-colonial project.
Yeah.
And it's not just Israeli companies. International players are heavily involved in developing these systems.
Who are the key players mentioned?
Well, big Israeli names like Elbit Systems, they actually won the 2024 Israeli Defense Prize, and Israel Aerospace Industries, IAI.
Okay.
But they work closely with international giants. Lockheed Martin, for example, leads the F-35 fighter jet program.
Right, the F-35s.
And that program alone involves something like 1,650 other companies, including Italy's Leonardo SPA, for instance.
So it's a massive global supply chain.
Huge. And these F-35s, the report notes, are set to be used in beast mode soon, carrying like 4 times the usual ordnance, up to 22,000 pounds.
22,000 pounds.
And they've already been integral, the report says, in dropping an estimated 85,000 tons of bombs on Gaza.
85,000 tons. It's hard to even comprehend that scale.
It is. And beyond jets, you've got drones, obviously. Elbit and IAI are key there, using swarm formations, automated weapon systems, often developed with partners like MIT, which we can talk about later.
MIT. Okay.
Even seemingly unrelated companies get pulled in, like Japanese FANUS Corporation providing robotics for production lines, or Danish shipping giant Maersk transporting military gear.
And this directly translates to profit, I assume.
Absolutely. The report flags a 65% surge in Israel's military spending just from 2023 to 2024, up to $46.5 billion.
65% increase.
And that surge, it means sharp profit increases for all these companies involved. It's big business.
Okay, so that's the direct military hardware. But you mentioned tech earlier. It's not just bombs and bullets, is it?
Not at all. The report dives deep into the tech sector, showing how repression has become progressively automated.
Automated repression.
Yeah. And again, this creates this unique testing ground, fueled significantly by U.S. tech giants.
What kind of tech are we talking about? What does dual use mean here?
Dual use means technology that has both civilian and military applications. And lots of companies provide this kind of infrastructure.
Like who?
Well, there's the NSO group you've probably heard of. They're Pegasus spyware.
Pegasus, yeah. Infamous.
Founded by ex-members of Israel's Unit 8200 intelligence unit, used against Palestinian activists, then exported globally.
Okay.
IBM operates Israel's Central Population Database, PIBA, since 2019. That enables biometric data collection, supports what Albanese calls a discriminatory permit regime.
So controlling movement, identification.
Exactly. Hewlett-Packard, both HPE and HP Inc., have apparently long enabled Israel's apartheid systems, providing tech for COGAT.
That's the military body controlling civilian affairs.
Right. And the prison service, the police.
Yeah.
Microsoft is mentioned, too, integrating systems across the military, buying up cybersecurity and surveillance startups.
And the really big names. Google, Amazon.
Yep. Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, and Amazon. They got this huge $1.2 billion contract in 2021 called Project Nimbus.
Project Nimbus. I've heard of that.
Mostly funded by the Ministry of Defense, apparently. It provides core cloud and AI infrastructure. And because the servers are located in Israel, it ensures data sovereignty and kind of shields them from accountability with minimal restrictions.
So the data stays in Israel.
And one Israeli colonel apparently described cloud tech as a weapon in every sense of the word.
A weapon. Wow. Anyone else?
Palantir Technology, Inc. is another one. They expanded support after October 2023. They provide predictive policing tools, defense infrastructure, their AI platform for real-time battlefield data.
Predictive policing. That sounds dystopian.
And their CEO made this really controversial statement in April 2025, basically saying Palantir Tech killed Palestinians in Gaza, adding, mostly terrorists, that's true.
That's quite a statement for a CEO to make.
He caused a stir, yeah.
It's just such a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Israel is like #1 globally for startups per person.
Right.
And the report says military tech startups grew 143% in 2024. And tech is, 64% of Israeli exports during this period?
64%.
Yeah.
It really seems like the tools enabling the occupation have become a major economic driver in themselves.
So it's not just the explicitly military stuff or the high-tech surveillance. What about more everyday civilian technologies?
That's another crucial point in the report. Ostensibly, civilian tech gets repurposed as dual-use tools of settler-colonial occupation.
How does that work? What are the examples?
Think heavy construction equipment. Global giants. Caterpillar Inc., for instance, has long provided equipment used for home demolitions.
Right, the Caterpillar Bulldozers.
Their D9 bulldozer specifically. It's been adapted, even automated, remote-controlled. It's become core weaponry for the Israeli military, used in almost every military operation since 2000 to, quote, neutralize territory.
Neutralize territory.
And since October 2023, its use is documented in mass demolitions, homes, mosques, infrastructure. There are even allegations, horrific ones, of it being used to crush Palestinians to death.
That's horrifying.
And Caterpillar apparently secured another multi-million-dollar contract in 2025.
Despite these reports.
Despite these reports, yes. And it's not just Caterpillar. Korean HD Hyundai and its subsidiary Doosan, Swedish Volvo Group, they're also linked to property destruction, razing Palestinian areas, homes, olive groves.
Olive groves, too.
Yeah. And their use apparently increased in the destruction in Gaza, places like Rafah, Jabalia. Sometimes the military even obscures the company logos on the machines.
Trying to hide the brand.
Seems like it. And Albanese's finding here is pretty blunt. These companies keep supplying the Israeli market, despite, her words, abundant evidence of Israel's criminal use of this machinery.
So it makes them complicit.
She argues it makes these passive suppliers into deliberate contributors to a system of displacement.
Okay, so that's the machinery of displacement and destruction.
Yeah.
But you mentioned replacement earlier. What's being built where Palestinian life is being erased?
Right, the other side of the coin. The report details the construction of over 371 colonies and illegal outposts, all needing power, infrastructure, trade supplied by various companies.
371.
And that's intensified massively since October 2023. 57 new colonies or outposts were established between November 23 and October 24 alone.
57 in less than a year.
Yeah. And the government budget for colony construction doubled, around $200 million allocated.
And the same companies are involved in building them.
Often, yes. The heavy equipment we just talked about, Caterpillar, HD Hyundai, Volvo used for construction. There's German Heidelberg Materials AG through its Israeli subsidiary Hansen Israel, accused of pillaging dolomite rock from a quarry called Nahal Raba on seized land.
Pillaging resources.
And companies building infrastructure that connects these colonies, like the Spanish Basque company CF Construcciones Auxiliar de Ferrocarriles. They're building the Jerusalem light rail lines, the Red Line and Green Line.
And connecting colonies to West Jerusalem.
Exactly. Even though other companies actually pulled out of similar projects due to pressure.
And it goes beyond construction companies.
Oh, yeah. Real estate firms are involved, too. The report names Keller Williams Realty, the global group.
Keller Williams, the big U.S. real estate company.
Through its Israeli franchisee, KW Israel, and another one called Home in Israel, apparently running roadshows in the U.S. and Canada, actively selling properties located in these colonies.
Selling homes on occupied land to international buyers.
That's what the report details.
Okay, so land is being taken, built upon. What about other natural resources? You mentioned water earlier.
Right. This goes back to 1967. Israel established systematic control over Palestinian natural resources. Albanese calls it an engineered dependency.
Engineered dependency.
And this dependency, she argues, was operationalized for genocide when Israel ordered the complete siege on Gaza in October 2023. Cut off water, electricity, fuel.
Creating unbearable conditions.
Leading to, again, her words, the deliberate creation of conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of Palestinians as a group.
Let's break that down. Water.
The Israeli national water company, Mekorot, has a monopoly. Palestinians are forced to buy water, often sourced from their own territory, back from Mekorot at inflated prices.
Buying their own water back.
And in Gaza, where 97% of the water is already contaminated, they become totally dependent on Mekorot. But after October 2023, Mekorot apparently ran the pipelines at only 22% capacity.
Just 22%.
Effectively turning water, she argues, into a tool of genocide.
And electricity, fuel.
Similar story. International energy companies, the report says, have fueled Israel's energy-intensive genocide. Drummond Company from the U.S., Swiss Glencore Plaque supplying... Then U.S. Chevron Corporation and Israeli NewMed Energy extracting natural gas from the big Leviathan and Tamar fields. They paid something like $453 million in royalties to Israel in 2023 alone.
Wow. $250 million in royalties?
British BP got new exploration licenses in Palestinian maritime territory. And crude oil suppliers, BP, again, Chevron, Brazil's Petrobras, they supply refineries in Israel.
And what happens to that refined fuel?
Some of it becomes jet fuel for the Israeli Air Force operating over Gaza.
So the fuel supply chain directly feeds the military operations destroying Gaza.
That's the connection the report draws.
It's really striking, isn't it, how this infrastructure for basic things, water, energy, is used first to entrench the annexation and then literally weaponized.
Yeah, weaponized to destroy Palestinian life while also fueling the military machine.
Okay, so we've got land, resources. What about trade? Selling goods produced through this system.
Right, trading the fruits of illegality, as the report puts it. Agribusiness is a big one. Tenuva, Israel's largest food conglomerate, it's actually Chinese-owned now.
Tenuva, I know their brand.
It profits from land dispossession, sources products from colonies, and then sells into the captive Palestinian market it helped create.
How captive?
Well, one example given is dairy. After Gaza's dairy industry was largely destroyed back in 2014, Palestinian dependence on Israeli dairy apparently shot up by 160%.
160%.
Then there's Netafim. You might know them, global leader in drip irrigation, now Mexican-owned. They design agri-tech systems that align with Israel's expansion plans, deplete Palestinian resources, and even collaborate with military tech firms.
So even irrigation tech is implicated.
And then there's global retail. Israeli products, including stuff from the colonies, end up on shelves worldwide, transported by companies like Maersk. Often, the report says, with misleading labels or mixed into supply chains so you can't tell the origin.
Hard to trace.
Yeah. And major supermarket chains, e-commerce platforms like Amazon.com, they operate directly in the colonies themselves.
Amazon delivers to settlements.
According to the report, yes.
Now, here's something you mentioned that might really hit home for listeners. Maybe something they've even unknowingly participated in. Tourism. Occupation tourism, you call it.
Yeah, it's a disturbing section. Major online travel platforms, Booking Holdings, Inc., so Booking.com, and Airbnb, Inc., they profit directly from listing properties for rent in Israeli colonies.
Wait, Booking.com and Airbnb list places in settlements?
They do. Booking.com listings apparently more than doubled since 2018 and tripled in East Jerusalem just in the year after October 2023. Airbnb listings also went up significantly.
But isn't that controversial? Haven't they faced pressure?
Huge pressure. Both companies were listed on a UN database back in 2020 specifically for this involvement.
Yet they continue.
They continue. The report notes Airbnb tried some humanitarian washing by donating profits, but fundamentally the listings remain. And Albanese argues these listings do more than just provide accommodation.
What else do they do?
They promote settler narratives, they legitimize the annexation of Palestinian land, and in some documented cases have even enabled settler violence against Palestinians.
Enabled violence.
By providing bases or lookouts, essentially.
That's deeply unsettling. Okay, so we've covered the direct actors, military, tech, construction, resources, trade, tourism. But the report also talks about enablers, right? Institutions that fuel the whole system.
Exactly. Beyond the companies on the ground, there's this web of financial and academic institutions that, according to Albanese, normalize and profit from it all.
Let's start with finance. How does money enable this?
Critically, the financial sector provides the funding. Treasury bonds, for instance, are a main source of finance for Israel's military budget, which, remember, doubled recently to 8.3% of GDP.
Who's buying these bonds?
Major banks underwrite them. BNP Paribas and Barclays are named, underwriting billions in bonds in 2024 and 2025.
Billions.
And the investors buying them, at least 400 investors from 36 countries, including huge asset management firms. BlackRock, $68 million mentioned. Vanguard, $546 million. Alliance's PIMCO, $960 million. These are massive sums.
BlackRock, Vanguard, these are names everyone knows. They manage pensions, index funds.
Exactly. There's also the Development Corporation for Israel, DCI. They apparently tripled their annual bond sales since October 2023, funneling nearly $5 billion to Israel. And they even offer investors options to specifically support the military or colonies through linked charities.
So you can direct your investment that way.
Seems so. And BlackRock and Vanguard, they're not just buying bonds, they are also among the largest institutional investors in many of the companies we already discussed.
Like who?
Palantir, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, IBM, Lockheed Martin, Caterpillar, Chevron, Elbit Systems, and the list goes on.
So my pension fund, my university endowment, might be invested in these companies through BlackRock or Vanguard.
It's highly likely. These holdings are often passive, held through index funds and ETFs. So yeah, universities, pension funds, ordinary people are implicated, often unknowingly.
What about insurance companies?
They're involved too. Alliance, $7.3 billion invested, and AXA, $4.09 billion, invest in implicated companies, and they underwrite the risks involved. which essentially de-risks the environment for these operations, making it easier for potential human rights abuses to occur.
De-risking human rights abuses. And sovereign wealth funds, like state-owned funds.
Yes. The Norwegian government pension fund Global, one of the world's biggest, apparently increased its investments in Israeli companies by 32% to $1.9 billion. It holds over $120 billion in the named companies we've been discussing.
Even with their ethical guidelines.
Despite the ethical guidelines, yeah. The Canadian fund Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, CDPQ, holds almost $9.6 billion or $6.67 billion invested in these companies.
And direct loans.
Banks like BNP Paribas, $410 million to Leonardo, and Barclays, $862 million to Lockheed Martin, provide direct loans and underwriting to companies supplying Israel.
This really raises a huge question then. You mentioned ethical guidelines. Why are these investments, billions and billions of dollars, considered ethically okay by so many institutions? The report mentions ESG frameworks.
Right, ESG, environmental, social, and governance investing. It's supposed to guide ethical investment. But the report argues pretty strongly that these frameworks often just overlook the human rights violations happening in the occupied Palestinian territory.
Why do you think that is? Is it too complex, too political?
Well, the report suggests these frameworks maybe haven't fully grappled with the specific, unique context of a prolonged illegal occupation and the kind of systemic issues Albanese is highlighting. They might tick certain boxes, but miss the bigger picture.
And financial impact of all this investment.
It's huge. A record 179% increase in equity prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange since October 2023. That's a $157.9 billion gain. The money aspect is undeniable.
And briefly, you mentioned faith-based charities.
Yeah, just a note on groups like the Jewish National Fund and Christian Friends of Israeli Communities. They're mentioned as funding settler expansion and military-linked projects, often benefiting from tax deductions in their home countries.
Okay, so finance is a massive enabler. What about the academic sector? How do universities fit into this picture? The report says they operate under the guise of research neutrality.
It's another complex area Albanese details. Within Israel, she argues that certain university departments, law, archaeology, Middle Eastern studies, help build the ideological scaffolding of apartheid, cultivating state-approved narratives, erasing Palestinian history.
An ideological scaffolding.
While science and tech departments act as R&D hubs for the military and arms companies like Elbit, IAI, IBM, Lockheed Martin, producing tools for surveillance, urban warfare, targeted killing, tools effectively tested on Palestinians, as she puts it.
Tested on Palestinians and global universities. Are they connected?
Very much so. Leading universities like MIT have labs doing weapons and surveillance research funded directly by the Israeli Ministry of Defense.
MIT, funded by a foreign military.
Apparently, it's the only foreign military funding research at MIT. This includes things like drone swarm control, which the report calls a distinct feature of the Israeli assault on Gaza since October 2023. Also, pursuit algorithms, underwater surveillance tech.
Wow.
MIT also had specific funding agreements with Lockheed Martin and Elbit Systems for access to research and talent.
It's not just MIT, presumably.
No. The EU's Horizon Europe program, a huge research fund, granted over $2.1 billion, that's $2.4 billion, to Israeli entities, including the Ministry of Defense itself.
The Ministry of Defense getting EU research grants.
Yes. The Technical University of Munich, TUM, collaborates with IAI on things like green hydrogen refueling, potentially for military drones, and with IBM Israel on cloud and AI, also with the municipality of Jerusalem on seamless urban mobility, which sounds benign but links into controlling movement.
Okay. Any UK examples?
The University of Edinburgh is mentioned, holding about $25.5 million or $31.7 million in investments in those big tech giants central to surveillance, and partnering with firms like Leonardo SPA, which aids Israeli military ops, and with Israeli universities like Ben Gurion on AI labs.
So the connections are deep. R&D investments.
They are, and Albanese's conclusion is stark. She says it's impossible to disentangle the expertise Israeli partners contribute to these partnerships from that gained and used in violations.
Meaning the research is inherently tainted by its application.
That's the implication. She even suggests that the recent crackdowns we've seen on campus protesters globally might be less about alleged anti-Semitism and more about shielding Israel and protecting these institutional, financial, and research interests.
That's a provocative thought. Okay, so connecting all these dots, the direct actors, the enablers in finance and academia, where does this leave us in terms of accountability? What does international law say?
Well, the existing legal framework is pretty clear. The UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, the UNGPs, require companies to conduct heightened human rights due diligence, especially in conflict zones like this.
Heightened due diligence, meaning they have to look closer?
Yes, be extra careful. But Albanese stresses something crucial. Just doing the due diligence, just ticking the boxes, won't absolve a company of responsibility if violations actually happen connected to their business.
So you can't just say, we looked into it.
Not if the violations are occurring anyway and you're still involved. And recently, there have been some really seismic legal shifts that raise the stakes even higher for corporations.
What kind of shifts?
First, the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, issued a landmark advisory opinion in July 2024. It declared Israel's entire prolonged presence and colony regime in the occupied Palestinian territory illegal in its entirety.
Illegal in its entirety. Based on what?
Based on violations of fundamental peremptory norms of international law, self-determination, the ban on annexation, racial segregation, apartheid. It essentially called the occupation itself an act of aggression.
It's huge. What else?
Earlier in 2024, the ICJ issued orders telling Israel to prevent genocidal acts and halt military operations that destroy Palestinian life in Gaza. This explicitly put all states on notice of this risk of genocide and reminded them about their obligations regarding arms transfers.
Putting states on notice.
And then, in November 2024, the International Criminal Court, the ICC, issued arrest warrants for Israel's prime minister and former defense minister for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Arrest warrants from the ICC.
Yeah, so taken together, these developments, well, they're game changers.
How so for corporations?
The implication, Albanese argues, is that companies are now clearly on notice of the serious risk of being implicated in very serious violations of international law, including human rights violations and potentially international crimes like apartheid or aiding and abetting war crimes.
So ignorance is no longer an excuse.
Exactly. What might have seemed like a passive or indirect link before could now be viewed as potential criminal complicity. The legal ground has fundamentally shifted.
So given this heightened risk, this shifting legal landscape, what's actually happening? Are companies pulling out what's being called for?
There are examples of divestment and withdrawal, some predating these latest rulings, but showing it's possible. The report mentions KLP, a Norwegian pension fund, divesting from Caterpillar, the Irish Strategic Investment Fund pulling out of Israeli companies, AXA divesting from Israeli banks, and Elbit.
Okay, so some movement.
And companies like Veolia, CRH, General Mills, G4S, Yokohama, even Pret a Manger and Ben & Jerry's have withdrawn or changed practices due to pressure related to the occupation over the years.
Ben & Jerry's, right? I remember that.
Activism also led Adidas, PUMA, and Araya to end sponsorships of the Israel Football Association because it included teams based in settlements.
So pressure can work. What are Albanese's specific recommendations now?
They're quite strong and directed at multiple actors. To UN member states, impose a full arms embargo on Israel, suspend trade and investment agreements, and enforce legal accountability mechanisms.
A full arms embargo. And to companies.
Her call is unequivocal. Cease all business activities linked to violations in the occupied territory. Terminate relationships with entities involved in the settlement enterprise or military operations. And crucially, provide reparations for harms caused.
Reparations, that's significant.
Yes. She also calls on the ICC and national courts to investigate and prosecute executives and companies potentially complicit in crimes. And finally, a call to action for everyone else, trade unions, lawyers, civil society, ordinary citizens to use tools like boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, BDS, and to push for legal accountability.
So a multi-pronged approach demanding action from states, corporations, courts, and civil society. Well, this deep dive, it's really starkly highlighted how this economy of occupation, as Albanese describes it, has arguably morphed into an economy of genocide, a system she calls a joint criminal enterprise, where profit seems inextricably linked to, and maybe even fuels, devastation.
It's a disturbing picture, and it's crucial to remember, as she points out, the specific companies and institutions named in the report, they're likely just the tip of the iceberg.
The tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, representing a much deeper structure of corporate involvement. And the key takeaway now, given the legal shifts, is that any decision by these entities to continue their engagement is being made with full knowledge of the potential crimes involved.
Acknowledge. That changes everything.
It really does.
Francesca Albanese concludes her report with a powerful, simple sentence. What comes next depends on all of us. This has been a lot to process. Heavy stuff.
It is.
But understanding these connections, these economic dimensions that often get overlooked, it feels like a really vital step. A step towards deciding for yourself what action you might take, or even just what questions you might want to ask next.
Absolutely. Knowledge is the first step.